The email arrived at 4:47 p.m. on a Thursday. Subject line: Transition Meeting, Friday 9 a.m. I stared at those 4 words, my coffee going cold in my hand. After 11 years at Meridian Data Systems, I knew exactly what a transition meeting meant. They weren't transitioning me to a new role. They were transitioning me out. I'd built everything they had, every system, every protocol, every line of code that kept their client data flowing smoothly through 17 state agencies. I'd started when Meridian was 8 people in a converted warehouse, back when our biggest client was a county tax assessor's office. Now we serviced half the western seaboard, and I was the only person who truly understood how all the pieces fit together. But I was also 53, expensive, and apparently replaceable. Friday morning, I arrived at the office at my usual time, 6:30 a.m., 2 hours before anyone else. I made coffee in the break room, the same cheap Colombian blend we'd been buying in bulk since 2015. I sat at my desk and waited. At exactly 9 a.m., Carolyn from HR appeared at my door with Marcus Chen, our new VP of Operations. Marcus had been with the company for 8 months. He was 31, wore expensive shoes, and had never once asked me how anything actually worked. "Diana," Carolyn said, her voice carefully modulated to sound sympathetic. "Thank you for coming in." I almost laughed. Coming in. As if I hadn't been coming in at dawn for over a decade. They sat across from me in my own office, and Marcus slid a folder across my desk. "We're restructuring the engineering division," he said, "moving toward a more agile, cloud-native infrastructure. We've decided to bring in a younger team with more current skill sets." Current skill sets. I'd written deployment protocols last month that saved them 6 figures in server costs. I'd debugged a catastrophic client data leak 3 weeks ago, while Marcus was at a leadership retreat in Sedona. "Your position is being eliminated," Carolyn added gently. "Effective today. We're offering a severance package, 2 weeks for every year of service." 22 weeks. Just over 5 months' pay for 11 years of work. "We'll need your access credentials and company devices before you leave," Marcus said. "Standard procedure." I opened the folder. Everything was already printed. They'd made this decision weeks ago. "I understand," I said calmly. Carolyn blinked. She'd probably expected tears, or anger, or at least questions. Marcus shifted in his chair, suddenly uncertain. "You'll have until 5 p.m. to clear your personal items," he continued. "We've arranged for IT to escort you when you're ready." I nodded. "That's fine. I just need a few hours to document the transition properly. There are some critical systems that require specific handling." "Actually," Marcus interrupted, "we've already hired a contractor to handle the technical transition. We don't need you to prepare anything." A contractor. Someone who would bill them 3 times my salary and still wouldn't understand what I'd built. "Understood," I said. I stood up, shook both their hands, walked them to the door. The moment they left, I sat back down at my computer and got to work. What Marcus didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 3 months ago I'd received an accidental email thread. So someone in finance had replied, all instead of forwarding privately. The subject line, Q4 Cost Reduction Targets. In that thread, I'd seen my name. I'd seen the words legacy employee and salary optimization and younger talent pipeline. I'd seen the decision being made in real time, couched in corporate euphemisms. So I'd started preparing. Not sabotage, nothing illegal, just insurance. Every system I'd built had been documented meticulously. By me, for me, in my own private archives. Every password, every configuration file, every integration point between systems that nobody else had bothered to understand. I'd also made sure that certain critical processes required manual authentication tokens that only I possessed. And I'd done it all on my own time, using my own equipment. Now, with 3 hours until my forced departure, I began the final steps. I opened the core infrastructure dashboard, the one that monitored all client data pipelines, and initiated what I'd coded as a maintenance lockdown sequence. It looked like a routine system update. In reality, it would quietly begin requiring secondary authentication for every critical process, starting Monday morning. Authentication that only I could provide. I copied my personal documentation to an encrypted drive. I backed up my private configuration files. I logged every single modification I'd made to their systems over the past 11 years, all time-stamped, all clearly marked as my intellectual work. Then I cleared my browser history, wiped my local drives, and packed my desk. At 4:30 p.m., I called Carolyn to let her know I was ready to leave. 2 IT technicians arrived to collect my laptop, my phone, my access badge. They were young kids, probably interns. They looked uncomfortable. "Sorry about this," one of them mumbled. "Don't be," I said. "You're just doing your job." I carried a small cardboard box to my car. A coffee mug, a framed photo of my daughter, a succulent plant I'd kept alive for 6 years. Everything that mattered from 11 years of work fit in a box that weighed maybe 8 pounds. As I drove out of the parking lot, I didn't look back. Saturday morning, I woke up at 6:30 a.m. out of habit. For the first time in years, I had nowhere to be. I made coffee. I sat on my porch. I stared at my phone. Around 10 a.m., I got a text from Priya, one of the senior engineers I'd mentored for 5 years. "Everyone's in shock. Marcus sent an email saying you decided to pursue other opportunities. Nobody believes it." "What actually happened?" I wrote back. "They restructured my position. I'm fine. Take care of yourself." She responded immediately, "This is insane. You built everything." I didn't reply. Sunday, I organized my documentation. Every file, every system map, every piece of institutional knowledge that existed only in my head and my private notes. I also reviewed my employment contract one more time. There was a clause I'd noticed years ago, one that most people skimmed over. Intellectual property developed outside of work hours using personal resources remains the property of the employee unless explicitly transferred. Everything I documented privately, every configuration detail, every authentication protocol, had been compiled on my own laptop, on my own time, in my own home office. Legally, it was mine. Sunday night, when I drafted an email to Marcus, I didn't send it yet. I wanted to wait until Monday, until they realized what they'd lost. The email was simple. "Marcus, as of today, I am no longer employed by Meridian Data Systems. Per my employment agreement, any intellectual property I developed independently remains my property. This includes all documentation, configuration details, and authentication protocols for systems I designed. Should you require transitional support, I am available for consulting at a rate of $500 per hour, with a minimum 20-hour engagement. Best regards, Diana." $500 an hour, 20 times what they'd been paying me. I set the email to send at 8 a.m. Monday. Then I went to bed and slept better than I had in months. At 7:15 a.m., my phone started ringing. I was in my kitchen making breakfast, and I glanced at the screen. Marcus Chen. I let it go to voicemail. He called again immediately. I ignored it. At 7:30, Carolyn called, then the company's CTO, then someone from the IT department whose name I didn't recognize. I turned off my phone and ate my eggs in peace. At 9 a.m., I turned my phone back on. 17 missed calls, 12 voicemails, 23 text messages. I listened to the first voicemail. Marcus, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Diana, we need you to call us back immediately. There's a critical system issue, and we can't access several client pipelines. This is urgent." The second voicemail was from the CTO. "Diana, I understand you're no longer with the company, but we're experiencing a major technical problem. We need your help resolving it. Please call me as soon as possible. The third was Marcus again. Diana, I don't know what you did, but our entire infrastructure is locked. Clients are calling. We need you to fix this now. I deleted all the voicemails without listening to the rest. Then I opened my laptop and checked the monitoring dashboard I'd built. The one that ran on my personal server, the one that mirrored Meridian's internal systems. Everything was running perfectly. The lockdown sequence had activated exactly as planned. Every critical client pipeline was flagged as requiring secondary authentication. No data was lost. No systems were down. Everything was simply waiting for me. At 9:30, I finally responded to Marcus's text with a single message. Received your messages. As outlined in my email this morning, I'm available for consulting at $500 per hour, 20-hour minimum. Let me know if you'd like to proceed. His response came in seconds. This is extortion. I replied calmly. This is the market rate for emergency systems recovery by the original architect. You're welcome to hire another consultant. For 10 minutes, nothing. Then my phone rang again. This time, it was Richard Castellano, Meridian's CEO. I'd met him exactly twice in 11 years. I answered. Diana, he said, his voice strained but controlled. We need to talk. I'm listening, I said. What's happening with our systems? Your systems are fine, I said. They're just locked pending proper authentication protocols. Protocols that were never properly documented by your team. Can you unlock them? Yes. Will you? I paused. There was a point where I almost didn't tell this story at all. My own mother said no one would listen, that I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers telling stories like this. But sitting here now, I know stories like this matter. Some pain deserves to be heard. Richard, I said slowly, I built every system you use. I maintained them for 11 years. I fixed problems at midnight, on weekends, during my daughter's birthday parties. And on Friday, Marcus told me I was being replaced by younger talent with current skill sets. Silence. So yes, I continued, I can unlock your systems. For $500 an hour, 20-hour minimum. Diana, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. You eliminated my position to cut costs. Now you're discovering what those costs actually were. We can bring you back, he said quickly, or reinstate your position. Full salary, full benefits. I don't want my position back. Then what do you want? I want you to pay me what I'm worth. Another long silence. Fine, he finally said. Send me a contract. I smiled. I'll have it to you by noon. By Monday afternoon, I had a contract drafted. Not by me, by an employment attorney I'd consulted 2 weeks ago, back when I'd first started preparing for this possibility. The terms were simple. Independent contractor status. $500 per hour for all systems recovery work, $300 per hour for ongoing maintenance and consultation. Immediate payment upon completion of each milestone. No exclusivity clause. I could work for anyone I wanted. Full retention of all intellectual property I'd developed independently. I sent it to Richard at 12:15 p.m. At 12:47 p.m., he called back. These terms are excessive, he said. Then hire someone else. Diana. Richard, how many clients have called you today? He didn't answer. How many contracts are you at risk of losing because your systems are locked? Still nothing. I'm offering you a solution. You can accept it, or you can spend the next 3 weeks trying to reverse engineer systems that took me 11 years to build. Your choice. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. We'll need a non-disclosure agreement, he said finally, already included in the contract. And you'll unlock everything immediately? As soon as the first payment clears. Another pause. I'll have our legal team review it, he said. You have until 5 p.m., I replied. After that, my rate goes up to $750 an hour. He hung up. At 4:43 p.m., my attorney called. They signed. So payments being wired now. $10,000, 20 hours at $500 per hour. By 5:30 p.m., the money was in my account. I opened my laptop, accessed the authentication systems, and began the unlock sequence. It took 47 minutes to restore full access to all client pipelines. At 6:20 p.m., I sent Marcus an email with a detailed status report and a bill for 3 hours of work. $1,500. His response came an hour later. Systems restored. Clients are back online. We'll need ongoing support. I replied, available Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., $300 per hour. Invoice weekly. No response. Tuesday morning, I received an email from Richard. We'd like to discuss a long-term arrangement. I smiled. Over the next 3 weeks, I worked exactly 26 hours for Meridian Data Systems. I fixed the systems I'd locked. I documented the processes they'd never bothered to learn. I trained their new contractor, a pleasant kid named Aaron who was in way over his head and knew it. Every Friday, I sent an invoice. Every Friday, they paid it. By the end of the month, I'd made $31,800, more than I'd earned in any 3-month period as their employee. But the real satisfaction came from something else. Word spread quickly in our industry. Meridian's restructuring had become a cautionary tale at technical conferences, in LinkedIn posts, in private Slack channels where engineers traded war stories. Did you hear about the woman who locked her former company out of their own systems? Meridian Data had to hire back their senior architect as a contractor at 10 times her salary. She built everything they had, and they fired her to cut costs. I started getting calls from recruiters, from competing firms, from startups who wanted someone who actually understood legacy systems instead of just chasing the latest framework trends. One of those calls came from Sarah Portman, CTO of Westridge Solutions, Meridian's biggest competitor. Diana, she said, I've heard about your situation. I'm sorry they treated you that way. I'm not, I said honestly. It worked out. She laughed. I'd like to offer you a position. Chief Systems Architect. You'd have full authority over our infrastructure, equity, benefits, and a salary that reflects your actual value. What's the number? I asked. She told me. It was almost double what Meridian had paid me. I'll think about it, I said. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of wine and thought about everything that had happened. Marcus had tried to replace me with cheaper, younger talent. Instead, he'd created a consultant who cost them more in a month than I'd cost them in a year. Richard had signed off on eliminating my position to cut costs. Now he was paying me triple my old salary just to keep their systems running. And I'd learned something valuable. I'd been undervaluing myself for over a decade. Friday afternoon, I sent Marcus one final email. Effective 2 weeks from today, I'll no longer be available for consulting work with Meridian Data Systems. I've accepted a position elsewhere. I recommend you hire a full-time senior architect immediately. You'll need one. His response came within minutes. We'd like to make you a counteroffer. I didn't reply. 2 weeks later, I started at Westridge Solutions with a team, a budget, and the title I'd earned years ago but never received, Chief Systems Architect. 3 months after that, I heard through industry contacts that Meridian had lost their 2 largest clients. Their new systems, built by Aaron and his team of contractors, had suffered a major data breach that made regional news. Marcus Chen quietly left the company shortly after. I didn't gloat. I didn't call. I didn't even feel particularly satisfied by their failure. I just kept building. 6 months after I left Meridian, I was invited to speak at a Women in Tech conference in Portland. The topic, Knowing Your Worth in a Youth-Obsessed Industry. I almost said no. Public speaking wasn't my strength, but something about the invitation felt right. Standing on that stage, looking out at 200 women, engineers, architects, developers, designers, I told them my story. Not to inspire revenge, not to encourage people to burn bridges, but to make a simple point. Know what you're worth, and don't let anyone convince you otherwise. I spent 11 years undervaluing myself, I said. I let them pay me less than I deserved because I was grateful just to be there. I let them take credit for my work because I didn't want to seem difficult. And when they decided I was too expensive, too old, too legacy, I almost believed them. The room was silent. But then I remembered something, I continued. I built everything they had. Every system, every protocol, every line of code that kept their business running. And that knowledge, that expertise, didn't belong to them just because they'd employed me for 11 years. It belonged to me. After the talk, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 25. I've been at my company for 3 years, she said quietly. They just hired a guy to be my manager. He has less experience than me, but they're paying him 30% more. Document everything, I told her. Every project you lead, every problem you solve, every piece of value you create. Keep it all in your own records, on your own time. Why? She asked. Because someday, I said, they might try to convince you that you're replaceable. And when they do, you'll have proof that you're not. She nodded slowly. 6 weeks later, she sent me an email. She'd left her company and started her own consulting firm. Her former employer was now her client, paying her twice what they'd paid her as an employee. I smiled when I read it. Some lessons are expensive. Some are painful. But the ones we learn the hard way are the ones we never forget. I spent 11 years being undervalued, overlooked, and underpaid. It took them less than 72 hours to realize what they'd lost, and it took me exactly one locked system to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. The people you dismiss today might be the ones holding your future in their hands tomorrow. Treat them accordingly.